Eric Towner.
Present. Stoopid Buddy Studios. Myself, John Harvatine, Matthew Senreich, and Seth Green. Our first office was a 1972 Winnebago. There's no time to think either. You just embrace the crudeness of it. It's meant to feel kind of like a really talented kid could have made this in their basement. Ever since I was a kid, magic and power about bringing things to life, whether it be my toys, they would always inevitably fight each other. Came full circle when I was animating toys on Robot Chicken professionally. It's like, wait, somebody will actually pay me to do this? Forever changed the course of my life.
What you chose to talk about, Eric, I found so fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And one I spent a good amount of time thinking about is like, what really is inspiring to me, or why do I do what I do? Why do I love what I do? Immediately went to my mom, and being, for me, like a really great source of inspiration. She didn't like getting us coloring books because the picture was already there. She was just more like, here's colors and here's paper. What is it that you want to come up with? And then she would, whatever we came up with, she had this way of almost celebrating it. I mean, she was full-time mom, but also like secretly had a master's in like child development. Parents that probably don't get nearly enough recognition for shaping people's mindsets and their creativity.
Eric Towner.
Present.
Yeah. For anyone who might not know you, could you tell us who you are and what do you do?
Sure. So I am an animator by trade. I'm the co-founder of Stoopid Buddy Studios. So as myself, John Harvatine, Matthew Senreich, and Seth Green joined forces in, 2012? And started a animation company, and we produce all sorts of things. So we do a show called Robot Chicken. I think that's probably what we're most well known for, but we are also doing all sorts of work for Disney. We're doing some Mickey Mouse specials in stop motion, which are really fun. Do a handful of commercial projects, and also have a department that does like full scale walkarounds and builds. So, it's funny. We're kind of all over the map, but it's a fun spot.
I would say most people would probably know your studio because of Robot Chicken.
Yeah.
That for me, I remember I remember getting the first season on DVD. I remember just really having a great time with it in college. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
I just really laughed. Yeah, I'm curious about Stoopid Buddy Studio then. If you said you're an animator by trade, right? Does that mean you're an animator by choice? Does that mean that the studio is the natural way to move forward? What were the decisions in those two?
Sure. I mean, I guess that was where I got my start, was as an animator, but always loved really just storytelling. And I loved ever since I was a kid, the kind of this magic and power about bringing things to life, whether it be, when as a kid animating, my toys. I mean, it like came full circle when I was animating toys on Robot Chicken professionally. It's like, wait, somebody will actually pay me to do this? Because I was just do this for fun on the weekends. But yeah, there's something magic about it. Like just this power to bring something to life and to get a reaction without having to be the center of attention, for me was like the infinite possibilities, and really just drawn to that form of storytelling. So yeah, so I guess that's like how I got my foot in the door, was as an animator, but on the side was always developing my own projects, teaming up with my good friend John Harvatine. We had all our side hustle stuff while we were working as animators, and eventually the side hustle stuff just became too much to keep our day jobs, and then we were like, well, what if we just started our own company? How hard could that be? It was It was very hard. Long story short, it's very hard.
What were the other side hustles? Like, what were the
Oh my gosh.
things you were, were in similar spaces, or they were just kind of money-making projects? Or
Just
creative
money.
projects?
I mean, I was doing all sorts of random. When I first moved to Los Angeles, I went to school in San Francisco, moved to Los Angeles, didn't really know anybody, and was doing side hustle editing jobs. Like, was editing weddings and bar mitzvahs. I was like, just doing whatever I could to make a few bucks to, pay rent and stuff. And it was like very randomly, a friend of mine pointed me in the direction of a Craigslist. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Craigslist, but it's like back in the early 2000s where all like jobs would get posted. So there was an ad on Craigslist. Somebody was looking for a stop motion animator. And I was like, wait, that's a job? Like, that's actually a job that will pay? Are we sure about it? And I hadn't done stop motion since I was like early days of college, and before that when I was a kid. So I just showed up for like an interview, and it was, they saw like a student film I had made when I was, my college film, and then I did an animation test. So I was like in behind a curtain animating for the first time in years. Unbeknownst to them, like I didn't tell anybody, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but luckily something went right and I ended up, landing that job and forever changed the course of my life.
Anyone who works in animation, this is something that sounds totally wild, right? You were doing an animation test in front of them during the interview, was it? Or
no,
you did it kind of over a week? It's just like,
that would
a boring
be
interview.
Easy, though. They're just like, oh, just a little, or like you make a kind of a bad pose. And they're like, ooh.
Yeah, exactly. You get 1 to 2 poses
with a clipboard. They're like taking notes on. Oh, that would have been terrifying. Luckily, it was not that, but and if you know stop motion a little bit and the present day tools, before I did my animation test, I was shooting on either, when I was a kid, like a VHS camcorder, which had like a 2-second pre-roll, and you were lucky to get a few frames or maybe no frames. And so you had to get the timing just right. And before that, it was on a wind-up Bolex film camera. And you're basically shooting blind. Like, there's no previewing what your animation was doing up to that point. So you're just like, I don't know, I think the timing's going to be cool. Like, we'll see. And then you ship off the film and then you keep your fingers crossed, like for a nerve-wracking few days, you get it back. So during that animation test was actually the very first time I had used what's called like a frame grabber, where you can actually see the animation you're working on. And I was like, started doing this test. I'm like, is anybody seeing this? This is a freaking miracle. Like, where has this been my whole life? So anyway, it was just like that tool is so stupid because it's so common, and it's like, how was anybody animating before that? And they were using surface gauges and measuring, the movement, but to be able to just see what you're animating, how cool is that?
Never really thought about the difficulty it would have been for someone like Ray Harryhausen to actually animate that stuff.
Yeah.
No idea what. You just hope that what you've shot comes back, and then you haven't had like a light leak in the bag on the film or something, days ruined.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine. And that they were all shooting, on ones. So even the movement's got to be that much, more minute. But yeah, and then you get the film back and there would be a light leak or something. I had a problem when I was shooting my student film. The what do you call it? The pressure gauge wasn't engaging on the film. So there was a lot of slippage. So I spent like, I could only get the equipment, like you check it out on a Friday, return it on a Monday. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to make this 5-minute film. It's all stop motion over one weekend.
It's so
literally
ambitious.
Did not sleep an entire weekend. Just animated, like blacked out the windows in my little apartment, and then got the film back, and I think only 5 shots were intact. It's very depressing. But the 5 that were there were good enough that I was like, able to muster the courage like half a year later to go back and finish the damn thing.
Okay, wow. So that's good. And then obviously from when you did that test, the studio that you worked for, what was that job like? It was just you were just animating, was it? Or
I thought that's what it was going to be, because you're hired to be an animator, which is really cool. But really, I spent the first month just using sandpaper and sanding puppet faces, just like this, for like 10 hours a day. And it's good. So the job that I was going to animate on, the puppets weren't ready, so they put me to work in the puppet department, which I quickly realized was not my strong suit, is fabrication.
sanding faces off puppets, yeah. Well, that's something that I was always so fascinated by with Robot Chicken is like it has a very distinct visual identity in terms of the kind of puppetry
A
and
nice way of putting it.
yeah, very very grungy. But it always put to mind something like do you remember Kablam? Do you remember that show Kablam? And
Yeah, vaguely.
and and there was like this bunch of heroes in it. Super Force Now or something. I can't remember what they were called, but they were just like stop motion figurines. And there was, the guy who's the muscle and he's always naked. And then there's Stinky Diver, who's like a diver who dives down toilets all the time. And Melt Man, like a guy who just melts. And the older that I got, I was just like, what a nightmare it must have been for continuity wise, which they clearly didn't care about.
Yeah.
Every time you have to melt one of the puppets every episode, which must have been fun as well, actually. But for Robot Chicken, like you're just adding mouth shapes on top of these puppets, right? A little crew cut out as they're talking, but at the same time, it feels so distinct. Like anyone could put up a frame and be like, oh, that's from Robot Chicken, right? You can tell the quote unquote toys or puppets or whatever you're using. What was the process of, this is for me now, whatever about anyone else listening, what was the process of putting those together? What was it like?
Yeah.
I know you said you weren't fabricating much, but you obviously know how it was done.
Yeah, I mean, when I animated on Robot Chicken, so this one job I had you quickly meet everybody in stop motion. And for me, it was great because I was like, oh, these are my people, like Los Angeles can be very overwhelming. And if you don't have if you're not, roaming around with the right pack, it can be very difficult.
I can see it kind of pushed you out into the countryside.
Well, yeah, that's where I am now.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is what it did to me. Living in the mountains, living off the land. So it was, and I had heard like rumblings about how crazy season 1 was to make, this is from my perspective at the time. And just like the animators were like flying through shots because there just wasn't time. The budget was like crazy low and challenging. And in a way, it kind of like forced this new stop motion pipeline to come into existence because it just had to move so fast. And there's no time to think either. So as an animator coming in, you just embrace the crudeness of it. And that's all just to like, the look of it, I would say is not intimidating. Like it's meant to feel kind of like a really talented kid could have made this in their basement or something like, but that's part of the charm is like just embracing the limitations of the toys. If you're animating with toys or just kind of the stupidness of what the puppets look like. So again, it's very, from an animator's perspective, there's nothing that precious about it, or at least for me, when I first started animating on season 2, it was like a playground. It was like every day you wouldn't even necessarily know what you were going to be animating. You would just come in and then, all of a sudden I'm like animating, somebody being ripped in half by horses going in opposite directions with their hands. I'm like, how are we going to do this? Okay, well, we got some balloon rubber here to do the stretching, and like several times I'm like, oh my God, I'm like kind of got pegged as an animator who could do like violence really well. So it's doing a lot of that and a lot of song and dance and a lot of like rap battles. Like, I don't know how I got pegged, or that kind of became my reputation on the animation side. But it was so much fun. I mean, really, really challenging though to get 9 or 10 seconds of stop motion done in a day. And like on the feature side, that's like you maybe get 4 or 5 seconds in a week, and so the pace just didn't allow for overthinking anything. And also just the look, just slapping sticker mouths on where you could, I think just plays into the humor, whether it's your cup of tea or not.
It really worked, and it definitely was a lot of people's cups of tea, because I think that it well, it felt like the right way to go with pop culture, right? It definitely felt like playing in your dorm room, talking about, oh, it wouldn't be funny in Star Wars if this happened, if Jar Jar showed up, and then you're like, oh, well, we have the toys, let's just act it out, and that's it. It's kind of like this great meeting of childhood play and like teenage into college years thought discovery, right? It's this kind of smashing of the two together, which I always found so fascinating, because I'm sure it has to have inspired people. I don't know who they are, but I'm sure
somebody's out
there. Never met someone.
There's one person.
Somebody is out there. Yeah, yeah. There's someone out there who's definitely inspired by it. But to just show, it doesn't take more than what you need, right? You literally have everything you need to kind of start doing something like this. Now, obviously, due to the nature of the work and who you had involved and where you're positioned, it started to draw a lot of attention, right? You got big name celebrities in to do stuff. You had a whole arc with Star Wars, which was insane, and George Lucas involved. And, it just seemed to outgrow its own shoes somehow, but stay there at the same time. And I knew Robot Chicken under Stoopid Monkey. At the end, it was always, oh, you stupid monkey, and then the monkey would be killed or whatever.
Yep.
So how did it become Stoopid Buddy?
Great question. I'll try to give you the shorter version of the story. So,
well, I love long answers.
So Robot Chicken started with Matt and Seth. So their shingle or their company was Stoopid Monkey, and I think that conversation was like, hey, we need a company name. You got any ideas? And Seth is like, well, I like monkeys, and Matt's like, well, that's stupid. And then it. And then it's Stoopid Monkey. So season 2 and 3, I became really good friends with John Harvatine, and we were the ones that were on the side. We were developing our own projects. This is like in his garage, like literally converted his garage into like a shooting space. And so, nights and weekends we were working on stuff together, and just it sort of became like an animation clubhouse for two. And we got to hang out, we got to like make really cool stuff, and we would then get like hired to do like directing work. So I was like directing Nickelodeon animation test at the time. Harv was doing some music video, like a Soulja Boy music video, something crazy. And it just got to the point where we loved doing that stuff. We loved animating as well, but had just kind of dreamed while we were working together, well, what would it look like if we started our own animation company? Like, could we do it? And at that time, we were young and risky. Like, there was nothing to lose at that time. Like, neither of us had, kids or anything. So we're just like, I don't know. Yeah, let's just start our own company. And so the first version of the company is called Buddy Studios. Buddy system being like, it's hard to do anything by yourself, so you might as well have a buddy. And and that was like the beginning of 2008 when we started that company. And it was us doing all sorts of things, wearing all the hats. We were animating, we were DPing, I became like the post-production guy, and our first office, this is kind of a weird story, but our first office was a 1972 Winnebago which is like an old RV. And so that just happened to be something we bought, again, going back to Craigslist, on Craigslist for like $1,000 for a project that we were developing. And then we just owned this thing and didn't know what to do with it. And we just desperately needed an office. So we ended up like gutting the RV and turning that into like our first office. And so that was like how that company got started. And luckily we ended up, just through word of mouth, and our reputation kind of grew, and we started getting enough projects that we weren't in the garage for very long. We outgrew the garage, signed our first lease in 2008. And that was like right when the Great Recession happened. So it's just an awful year to start a company. But somehow we were like scrappy enough to make it through that year and grow. So, and we, over the first couple of years of the studio, Buddy System, we were, again, doing some awesome like animation tests, developing things, pitching things, and doing a bunch of commercial work as well. And it was about 3 years later that Matt and Seth had another project, and they really loved the idea of teaming up with us on that. And it just kind of like rekindled our love for one another and our like-mindedness. So yeah, it was 2000, again, about 4 years after we started that company, that we decided to join forces, and Buddy System meets Stoopid Monkey, hence Stoopid Buddy Studios.
There's some, like, you obviously can't plan this kind of stuff. There's a great serendipity to it all, though. Really,
none of it was planned. Just, zero.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I'd love to say we had this like, it was like basically, our business plan, and it was probably on a napkin, was like, we just want to make cool shit with people we like working with. And it hasn't changed too much since then. But while we were renovating the Winnebago, there was something called, it was like it felt like we found a treasure map, but it was like this old, like oil stained, ripped document that was like the code of ethics for recreational vehicles. And that is something that we just kind of hung on to. I mean, it was like simple stuff like, hey, share the road. Hey, clean up after yourself after you're done camping. And so we always loved the idea that the studio would just always be really creative, really fun, and kind of like going camping with your friends or going to summer camp. So that sort of inspired us to write what's called like the Buddy Code, which is on our website. It's just like, again, like really simple rules to follow for people that are our buddies or that we work with.
That's something that really caught my eye when I was on your website, is because I think a lot of companies, they'll have their quote unquote behaviors, right, on the wall when you walk in. But it's very rare that someone has them on their website. They might have it in a mission statement or something like,
right.
We are honest people, and then, it's a house full of liars kind of thing. It's always totally contradictory.
Yeah. Anytime anybody says like, hey, I'm an honest person, immediately I'm like, are you really? Like, why do you have to point that out?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I've got nothing to hide, man. Shh, get back. Yeah. That's so interesting, because it's like a signal to other people how you want to work, right? Because that's it's basically you're saying, this is how we enjoy working, and if you want to engage with us, this is the kind of a system that we hope you'll be able to follow. And it's not like you're forcing it onto someone. You're just setting a tone of kind of mutual respect, right, straight away.
Yeah, that's the idea, is hopefully you'll attract like-minded people, and that it'll just save a step later of being on the same page with either people that work on the projects, or if you're working with, clients or whatever it might be. So yeah, and it's definitely evolved over the years. And I think when we first started, it was very much through the lens of like, okay, what's the studio we as animators would want to work for, and what does that look like? How do we make that really fun and really attractive? Because we might not be able to always, depending on the projects, like match the rates of other places, but we still want to have, top tier, like be a destination for some top tier talent. And it's incredible, like the amount of talented people we've been able to work with over the years it's just stunning to me when I think of all the projects, all the people that have come through, and we as like, a lot of companies have to ebb and flow and, expand and contract as projects come in. And yeah, it can be very challenging though, because you don't want to see people go, or you don't want to lose people. And it's just all, the nature of the beast is you can't always keep everybody you want to working full time. So it was always for us, like a real thing we would stress about, is not having enough work or whatever to, sustain people's livelihood regularly. We wanted to be a place people could count on. And for a while we were, and did that really well. Last year was really challenging with all the, just the state of the industry and everything kind of getting cut back, and there's strikes, and, it's just a really challenging year to navigate. COVID was also a very challenging time to navigate all of that. So it's been a roller coaster, but very proud of the things we've been able to make over the years.
I think that's so important to point out as well, though, because I think there might be two conflicting schools of thought when it comes to people who start in the industry, which is like they're essentially looking for jobs for life, but they're also looking for projects that they're proud of, right?
Yeah.
And to have the two things, it's very hard to have them flowing. Like there's no studio ever that has been consistent in tone and success, right? It just happens where, the ones who had the strong voices and had something to say, they made the stuff that they wanted to do, and then they take a break and other people are coming in. And it's just the nature of, because we're all humans, we all have different things that we want to say. So whoever's at the top of the studio kind of directing that, and the new voices coming up, there's always going to be transitionary periods, and how you navigate that is super tough because it's a transition of business, not just storytelling.
Yeah.
And it's and on top of that as well, because this is project based, it also means that it's contract based. As much as everyone wants to hold on to the people they've come to know and love, when you don't have the money, it's unfair to ask them to stay, right? So that's why you have contracts. And if you don't have a project, you don't have the money. And I think people forget that we're making movies and shows, they're contracts. They have to be finished, and we have to move on then, right? So sorry, I'm just rattling on about your point there, because that's something I've been thinking about recently as well. Is like the reality of the industry is it's contract based, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's negative, because you've got a great opportunity to go from, oh, I really want to work with these people, or I really want to work with them, and oh, they've got something coming up. And sometimes the stars align, sometimes they don't, But,
yeah, exactly.
I didn't have a question in there. I was just agreeing with you, really, in terms of what you said.
And I, in turn, agree with you.
Yeah, well, let's just get this circle going.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, though. It's just part of the nature of the beast is people will come and go, and for whether you're on the studio side of it, or the jumping from project to project, like it creates a huge variety, and hopefully new adventures and opportunities, and opportunities to see what you do or don't like working on, and hopefully like things are at a point where you have a choice between projects and studios, and go wherever it might best suit you.
I've just realized I haven't start to actually get into the meat, which I realize we won't have a lot of time to get into now, but of this, which is, this is a podcast about inspiration, right? And what you chose to talk about, Eric, I found so fascinating. So I'll leave it to you to introduce your thoughts on.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a great question, of like, and one I spent a good amount of time thinking about is like, what really is inspiring to me, or why do I do what I do? Why do I love what I do? And so for me, I go like immediately, and I was like, I don't know, maybe that's a little too cheesy to talk about, but I immediately went to my mom, and being for me like a really great source of inspiration. And part of the reason I think that came to my mind is because I'm a new father. So I got a son. He's a little guy. He's like 9 months old. And I think about like, oh, how do I want to, now I'm in charge of screwing this kid up. Like how do, or not, what works or doesn't work for me. And my mom was always one. So I was one of 5 kids and right smack dab in the middle. And so you kind of get lost in the shuffle a lot. And I spent a lot of time just like in my own imagination, and my mom always encouraged that. Like she was, the first one that would, she didn't like getting us coloring books because the picture was already there, so she was just more like, here's colors and here's paper, what are you going to come up with? What is it that you want to come up with? And then whatever we came up with, she had this way of almost celebrating it, and she, in her own right, like she was full-time mom, but also like secretly had a master's in like child development and things like that. And I never really thought about how that would apply to our upbringing until, thinking about like inspiration and where it can come from. So yeah, for me, just loving drawing, loving being creative, loving telling stories, a lot of that, spun from her and what she would encourage us to do. Like we didn't have TV growing up, and it's partly because we grew up in a pretty rural area. But also because my mom was so good at like creating adventures and stories, and we would always just be outside making things, or going on adventures or whatever it would be, and that's really stuck with me over the years.
You said your mom was. Does that mean she's passed away now, or?
Sorry, was no. She's still.
I was just like, wow, yeah. Let's hopefully she's still going.
Sorry,
yeah.
I shouldn't. The was just me.
It was just the past,
under her supervision for the first 18 years of my life.
How did you find the transition then to school then? Because you're going out of this kind of nested space, right? That she has tremendous, I guess, control over, and then you're kind of going into society with kids. Like, how did that challenge your creativity then?
I loved it. I mean, I grew up again in a part of the country where it was pretty unusual to love animation. Certainly, filmmaking, which I got into when I was like 13. I got into doing stop motion animation and had a really fantastic teacher that helped encourage and inspire that part of me. So then to go to like a film school where there's a whole class of people that share the same interests that you do, and you're not such an outcast just by way of what you're interested in. I mean, it was really, me and my brothers and my sister, like, that were as into this kind of art, in just even in our town. So to then be able to go to a film school that had, classes where you could actually learn these things other than just like learning them on your own. And, there was no real like technical way to learn a lot of these skills or anything like that. So, I was like in the media department, at my high school, and, got to make like short films. Any chance I'd have, to convince a teacher that, hey, what if I just made instead of doing a book report, like maybe we could do this film, like this movie project. And usually they're like, oh my God, you're so excited about this. Like, yeah, you're going to learn all the material. And I'd like learn the stuff so much better because, you're actually out making something. And so yeah, for me, like that transition, I couldn't be more excited for it. Like I go back to that and I had a very idyllic and very fortunate to have the upbringing that I did, but I was really excited to get out, see the world, and go on adventure. So it was a fun transition.
I think you touched on something really important there, which is like obviously you've got key figures in your life that are encouraging your artistic pursuit, right? Because unfortunately, with the education system, the way it's set up is there's certain things that have kind of been inherited from the industrial age, which is like, you know, the things that are more likely to get you a job in a factory are the things that you're going to learn the most, you know, not the media, not, you know, filmmaking. But you've also touched on something really amazing, which is like natural curiosity is like the engine of learning, right? You didn't need any encouragement beyond that. You're begging your teachers, I can learn in this way. Just give me the permission to do it, please. And they're like, oh, okay. You know, I mean, what a phenomenal thing to have. So what was your, like, I'm talking about high school then, before college, you know, and even, what's the school before that? Middle school? I don't know. American.
Middle school.
Middle school, yeah.
That's Americans.
What were they like?
It's really funny because I remember feeling that way about like, well, why do I need to learn calculus? Why do we need to learn algebra 2? Like, I don't know how this applies. So a lot of the, you know, I mean, you look at a lot of education and a lot of it's founded way long ago, you know, and it is very like regimented, or you need to learn these things, or to know if you're doing well, you've got to get these grades or these scores on this test or whatever it might be. And so you just feel like, okay, here's a book, go read the book. And then you're going to be quizzed on like some form of history that you might not think applies to you, you know? And so when I was in middle school, and this is when I was, 13, I had one class that I took and one teacher that just completely broke all the preconceptions of what I thought a class should be. And we in this class, and his name is Thomas Lisco, Mr. Lisco. His class, like we were learning to play chess. He was like teaching us really advanced visualization ways of like memorizing things, which was really cool. We were digging into like Shakespeare in a way that was actually interesting. And then and then at one point there was a project that was just like, make something. That was it. It was just, you pitch me on what you're going to make, and then you're going to go and make it. So it was almost like giving yourself an assignment. And so me and my buddy Fritz decided we're gonna design a video game and we're gonna make a movie about it. And we had like no idea, like that was just the dumbest thing we could come up with, because we liked movies and we liked video games. And so it was in that class, like going through and getting my friends and my brothers together, and we made like the dumbest like 10-minute short movie you would ever like think of. But it was great because it was like got to like flex all these creative muscles, but do it in like a classroom environment was really amazing. And really it's like you're in control of the like to pitch your own thing, and then to say, okay, now you're going to make the thing that I just came up with. You're going to work that much harder versus being like, you have to do this thing. You know, if you can give ownership to kids about what it is they want to do, and, you know, and then you hold them to it and make them follow through with it, like that just seemed way more interesting. So that's when I knew, like when I was 13 and, you know, we made this thing, and I didn't, you know, I was a really shy kid, like very, you know, introverted, shy kid is something I've had to work very hard to get better at, right? But for me to then have this like movie made that my teacher deemed was inappropriate to actually show in the classroom.
Did he? Oh my God.
We never got to screen it in the classroom. And so, you know, some of my friends had like a last day of school party, and we brought the tape, popped it in, and had this entire room of kids just howling, laughing at this thing. And it was like the best feeling ever. I'm like, you're laughing at this thing with these jokes I'm telling you, but you're not laughing toward me or at me or whatever. And so I was just hooked at that point. I was like, I know this is exactly what I want to do, is keep doing this. And so, yeah, the high school part was just like anytime I could trick my teachers into letting me, you know, get creative.
I love it's a trick, right? It's some kind of
definitely a trick.
alternate education route where it's really truly actual education. And it puts to mind the idea of like, you know, teaching when it's done correctly is a very creative discipline, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just a delivery system of whatever this kind of routine algorithm of learning is. They're just kind of giving you books and Shakespeare or whatever. It should be used to inspire creativity. And that's why I think, you know, the teacher you're talking about, I feel very similar. There's certain people in my life I can point to, like Mrs. Stevenson, my we call it primary school, my middle school principal also taught our class.
Oh,
And
wow.
she would, instead of reading whatever the prescribed book is, she'd read us The Hobbit, or Harry
Yeah,
Potter had
or
just come out. She'd read that book, and you know, she had a Japanese woman visit and taught us Japanese and how to use chopsticks, like in the middle of Ireland. You know, we didn't even know what Japan was, you know, but we're learning the language because we're all little kids.
Yeah.
But I was the same as you, where I remember in high school, I would bring my video camera in and secretly film one teacher taught us Irish, the language, because he would go on these tirades, these incredible tirades of just like, what are you doing? You know, he'd go red, and I just have the camera in a bag just pointing at him. And I remember pointing at it, and then I'd do like fake interviews with people, with other students who wanted to be actors, whatever, pretending to be his like colleagues talking about him. And then I cut it together as a documentary, and I showed it to him, and he went bright red with embarrassment, but he gave me permission to use it, so I used it in my portfolio to help me to get into college. And within 2 days, the principal called me into the office and was just like, "So we need you to delete that footage of everything." And I was like, "Okay." So I deleted it off the computer, but I still obviously had other copies, you know.
Yeah.
I must find it again. So I know exactly what you mean. It kind of like, the freedom helps you learn faster, right? You know, because that curiosity is an engine. You don't need any encouragement to learn. You're doing it all at your own speed there.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to ask you as well is, you must have then gotten a TV at some stage if you liked video games and movies, right? So your mom acquiesced to getting a TV.
Oh yeah. No, we had a TV. It was just, because we lived on the wrong side of the canal, like we only had like 2 channels and there was nothing ever on. But I do remember, like we would have like the Saturday morning cartoons, you know, and so get a taste of some animation. But I wouldn't say we watched too much of anything, and probably until I was like, yeah, maybe in middle school, I think, you know. And at that time, I mean, as far as like early inspiration for animation, you know, I mean, I loved the Disney movies. I loved the you know, Robin Hood, the animated Disney version of that, like stuff like that. But it wasn't until I had a friend, so we didn't have Fox, like we just didn't have that program or that station. So I had a friend though who had his grandma lived in California, and she would record The Simpsons onto VHS and ship the tapes out to him. And so I would then sneak over to his house and watch The Simpsons. And it was like, oh my God, you can say damn in a cartoon? Like it was like broke my mind. So yeah, a lot of like my animation fixes were sneaking over to my friend's house. And I had another buddy who, they had Nickelodeon. You know, we didn't have Nickelodeon. And so we would watch Ren and Stimpy, which again, like just broke my brain, like the how crazy and creative the animation was. And it like felt like anything can happen in animation when you're watching that kind of stuff. And we watched a lot of Muppet Babies too. I don't know that applies so much my long-term prospects, but I got a baby now, so maybe that has to do with, thanks Muppet Babies.
What was your first exposure to stop motion then?
My first exposure to animation period was with Post-its. So it's funny, and I just happen to have some here, but like you know, Post-its. And so I, made this, what I thought was my discovery, that you could draw on it one and then go to the next. And all of a sudden when you flip it, you've got a flip book. And at the time I thought I invented flip books. I did not invent animation, by the way. But it was amazing. So that's like, I started doing flip books on all my like class books. I'm sure a lot of animators did that as well. Like, as you're turning the pages and then so, I think it was this summer, me and my younger brother spent way too much time not outside doing anything, but borrowed my dad's camcorder and would just bring our, we kind of discovered that, and this is not ideal. Like if we had Super 8, this would have been way easier. But when you have like VHS camcorders, it takes about 1.5 seconds for the tape to get going. So you'd basically like push the button, wait, and then push it again really quick, and if you timed it right, and we got the timing down pretty well, that you could get some stop motion animation going. But we just didn't know what we were doing. So we would just take our toys and they would always inevitably fight each other, or would have, dumb stories. There was one that like this little clay animated guy watched like a Rambo movie, and then had this nightmare that Rambo came and blew him up with a grenade. So it was just like usually something horrible would happen. But I remember like spending an entire summer like in the basement just making stop motion films.
Films, quote unquote.
Yeah. It felt like a magic trick. Felt like a really cool magic trick.
And I think it is the closest to magic that we'll get, really, is because you when it's done so well, obviously something like Robot Chicken or the other work that your guy's studio does, like you can see the process on screen, right? So to me, when I watch that, I'm like, I know how they've done it, and that inspires me, because I then, like, it's not that there's a lack of craft, right? So let me preface this. If you watch some of the old Disney animation, I know that I have to get good at drawing in order to turn things in space, right? Whereas if I get a couple of toys and start working within the limitations of their joints and take an image every second, like there's the gap is closed slightly, right? It's you're just like, okay, I can do this, I can start here and I can make it better. And it's a fun way to, I think, get results quicker, if that makes sense. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's more accessible in a way, I think, for a lot of people. Like if you talk to my partner Harv, he dreamed of being a Disney animator when he was a kid. So he would just draw, and I've seen some of these drawings are hilarious, but he would just draw Donald Duck over and over and over, like, but he just sucked at drawing. And it was just, there's just some people are really great at it, or can like visualize something and put it, channel it through their hand and onto paper, and some people can't. And he was on the latter side. So again, like stop motion was really cool because you could still do the animation and get really good at the animation side without having to have, the ability to draw really well.
And I think, because we've talked a bit about the idea of people helping us in terms of early, I would say, mentors, right? I don't know how else to describe someone like your mother, or what was your mother's name? Sorry.
Lori.
Lori. You don't mind putting that out there? Is that a
no,
Lori Towner? Yeah.
She
doesn't mind. Someone like Lori, your mother, or your teacher as well, like the encouragement that they can give them, because it's like the sense of freedom and confidence that comes from that. Then it's unfortunate he wouldn't let you guys screen the film, but
I got it.
Yeah, you understood.
It was
right?
blood effects and stupid things like that, and we had like plastic guns that looked kind of real. So I mean, I guess
you were really pushing.
Everybody who was in that class saw it. It's just not in the classroom setting.
Something that they're very good at is like facilitating, or at least giving confidence. I always say that confidence is a gift, right? It's not, you can feel really confident in something that you've made, but usually when you're offering it up to someone, you're like, there's nervousness to it, and then you're like, oh, what do you think? And they go, wow, this is amazing. The surge of confidence you get from that, then you're just like, oh, I did do a good job. I did a good job. You know? And I think someone like your mother or that teacher, to be able to do something like that, but now you're head of a studio, right? You're working on so many projects. How do you then find the time to do that? Like, what's your process to kind of give that back to the people you work with?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of that is in trying to create an environment of positivity, of feedback, of risk taking, like making it, like almost giving permission to mess things up, you know, at least we're trying, you know, and we love trying new stuff all the time. And half the time we know we're just going to fail, but maybe we'll learn something along the way. But yeah, I mean, it's really cool. Like, you know, now in this position, like have the opportunity to see talent come in that may even, you know, come in as an intern, right? Or just somebody that's really eager, that, you know, hasn't quite got the skill set yet, but you can see the enthusiasm, you can see the passion, you can see the attitude, like a really great attitude and a willingness to just try and do things. And then to see those folks blossom. And, you know, we've had interns that have become, you know, assistant animators, that have become animators, that have become animation directors, that are now like directing, you know, full series, TV series with us. And it's really cool to see that growth. So, you know, as much as we can, you know, we try not to put a ceiling on anybody's abilities or role at the studio. You know, we hope that we have an environment where people come in and feel like with enough hard work and with enough effort that the sky's the limit for their careers and where they want to go. And sometimes those, you know, align with the studio, and sometimes they don't, you know, like as far as where somebody's going. If we can, we certainly love to see that growth within the studio though. And yeah, just, it's really giving people opportunities. But I think you really nailed something with the confidence. Like if you can encourage confidence, like, you know, these teachers and parents that probably don't get nearly enough recognition as they should for shaping, you know, people's mindsets and their creativity. But a lot of it, I think, is just a little encouragement and confidence to not just make something, but to also share something, you know. And I think that's really the hard thing is, you know, once you've made something, to actually have the guts to put it out to the world, to criticize or critique or to judge or whatever people are going to do, or to enjoy, right? You know, I think that's maybe the hardest step, is not just finishing the thing, but sharing the thing or putting it out there.
I love that. And an addendum to that point is something that I've learned, especially with my podcast or my other work, and I'm sure you think the same, is like, you never know the effect your work will have on someone. And I mean that in a positive way.
Yeah.
Right? Generally people who bash things negatively, it hasn't affected them. They're great. Off you go over there, you know. But the people who like connect with something, there's no way to predict how they connect with it. And, you know, I've been in situations where people come up and they're like, I love this video that you've done. It really helped me through this particular time. And I can never understand how that is connected to them through their eyes and in their heart. There's no way. And now they're talking to me as the person who is that thing, right?
Yeah.
Which I can never be. I don't know if this is a bit nebulous what I'm describing, but I know in that moment that there's no point in me saying anything other than thank you so much. I'm really glad that meant something to you. Yeah. I'm really glad it connected with you in that way. And this is my thought and how I made it. But I can never be the situation in their life at that stage when I hit. Like, there's no way that you knew making Robot Chicken that you were helping me through my college years while I was watching and laughing. And I was just like, oh my God, this was so... There's stuff like this out there, right? And it's the same as, I don't know if anyone will ever listen to this, who knows, and gain something from it.
I think my mom will definitely listen to this. So.
Oh, will she? Yeah, because you talked about her, yeah. Well, it's a pleasure to have you listening, Eric's mom. And but one thing I did want to touch on is your guys' association then with the Nouns Festival. You talk to me a bit about Nouns, because that, I think, is also a tremendous opportunity to give confidence to people's creative voice, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Being a part of one of the founders, one of the 6 founders of Nouns Fest, and it really is for me an exciting opportunity to give back to animators and to filmmakers, an opportunity to make the thing they want to make. So it's a little bit like going back to that assignment in Mr. Lisko's class of what's the thing you want to make, pitch the thing, and and if it's interesting enough or good enough, or you've got the chops to back it up, then here's some money to like help you make this thing. And it's a really cool opportunity. So we're funding 50 filmmakers and animators to, through Nouns, to make the thing that they want to make. And so we've gotten over 350 submissions, 350 pitches, which has been insane. And there is so much talent out there, and there's so many great ideas. And I guess the unfortunate thing is we only get to make 50 of them. But as far as I know, it's the only animation festival that's actually paying filmmakers to make the thing they want to make. And then at the end of the day, and it almost sounds like, it's like when I talk about it, it's like, well, what's the catch? But there is no catch. At the end of the day, they also get to own the film. So we're going to have a really cool in-person festival event. It's going to be, I think, September, October. We're still like locking down the venue. It will be in LA. Sorry, Cole, but we're going to have to try to get you out for this thing.
Well, you know what, Eric, I will say as an addendum, I would love to, I'll try figure it out on my end, because I would love to. And just for my own thing, now that you've been on the podcast, I need to get you to sign the guest book, right? So I have to come out there.
I only do that in person, so
exactly.
Either I'm in Ireland, or you're going to have to come out to California.
Exactly, yeah. But sorry, the venue, you were locking it down.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And so we did a round of this last year where it was 18 filmmakers. We did it at Brain Dead Studios in LA and screened, what was about an hour's worth of short films. And there's just something so magical about animated short films. Like, you think of like all of the great shows that are on TV, they all started, like, to my knowledge, almost every single one of them started as a short film. So whether it's, South Park was a short film, Robot Chicken was a short film, The Simpsons started as shorts on the Tracy Ullman Show, Rick and Morty started as shorts for Channel 101, and so it was such a cool thing, and the energy was so great to just, get all of that talent together. And the great thing about Nouns Fest is it's global. So we've got, animators and filmmakers from all over the world participating and making shorts, and getting a little bit of scratch to do it too. So it was very inspiring, and it really did inspire us to go back and like, can we blow this thing up and make it even bigger and, fund more films, and and that's what we've got the opportunity to do this year.
What's the ultimate goal with that in your head? Is it just to become a platform of opportunity?
I think, yeah, absolutely. Like a platform that celebrates animators, celebrates animation, and then gives them, financially an opportunity to express themselves, to maybe make the thing that they haven't been able to make, and to celebrate the work, and hopefully give animators a platform as well to get their work seen by tons and tons of people.
Well, are you going to put them then online after the festival?
Yeah, absolutely. absolutely. We'll probably, and I shouldn't tell you this because I want you to be there in person, but we'll probably live stream the whole event. So anybody
Wow.
can watch the live event, and we'll obviously put the films up, and even in like, what's the goal beyond that? I mean, it's hard to say. I think it's going to be different for every animator. You know, maybe it's a stepping stone for them in their careers. You know, I know when we did the fest last year, I know one of those animators got approached and ended up signing a deal with Fox to develop that idea into a show. And so if we can help in some way, like progress somebody's career in a meaningful way, or just, again, just, you know, create a program that brings a lot of smiles or laughs to an audience, like that feels like there's a lot of different boxes you could check as far as like what is or isn't success.
I think it's great as well because, you know, we're in a time now where, and this is something I'm always mulling things over in my head. So let me share this half-baked thought. We're in a time now where everyone is kind of pushing back against the cost of living, the cost of housing, and these are all real things, right? And how expensive the world is, and how much harder, you know, it is to secure your future in a world that's kind of shifting so much. But I think people are starting to click into the real truth of the digital age, which is the opportunity through digital spheres is so huge, right? Yeah. It's so big that now, which is not something that would have existed years ago unless there was like some cabal of patrons in ancient Rome or something who had loads of money that would just say, okay, paint me a picture, is kind of like, in my head, this is kind of a digital version of that now. And it's totally accessible as if you have an internet connection, right? Yeah. That's all you really need here. And I find that's where I'm just like rallying against this idea of how much harder it is now. I just think we're looking in the wrong spaces, right? And if you look at something like the Nouns Fest, I think these are like early indicators of what the future will look like in terms of patronage, right? In terms of artistic patronage. And I think that's an incredibly exciting thing to be a part of, really, you know. So the more I hear about it, the more I love, really.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think about when I was a kid growing up, it was hard to make anything because the tools were so primitive now. Now anybody with, you know, with a phone and an internet connection can you know, make a movie or can do an animation thing, and then you can instantly put it out to the entire world if you want to. There's, you know, and I think that for free, that can be overwhelming, but the opportunities there are huge. And I think, you know, it's really just this day and age and the time we're in right now that there are all of these little undiscovered opportunities. You just have to be looking in the right place sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's where it takes kind of larger voices like yourself to amplify these things, right? To say, hey, there are good opportunities here, right? And that's down to the person to decide whether the opportunity is for them or not. But ultimately, you know, from the other side, that's a really tremendous thing. And the more you talk about camcorders, the more I'm reminded of the box of them I have here.
You know, how many boxes? How many do you own? Oh, that's a good one.
Oh my God.
Little Sony.
Well, this is like because
my i8 or a.
This is actually a digital 8.
Oh,
so,
my bad.
Yeah, which is a high 8 camera. It just has a fire wire so you can connect it to your computer or something. And the reason why I have this is because my grandfather, when we were younger, would always record videos of us as kids, right? And so we have this like bank of this archive of living memory, basically. And I have all the tapes because nobody else in my family, similar to you, I was the video nerd. So I inherited all these when he passed away. You know, even before then, he just kind of shoved them in my hands. So I've been slowly going through them, which is an amazing thing. Like,
yeah, that is really, I mean, that feels very familiar.
For the kids who don't know what tapes look like, here's what they are.
That's them kids. There used to be a world where you'd have to stick that in a machine.
Yeah, just click it down.
it would play the images on a television.
Yeah, so imagine trying to
It was a different
press
time.
stop and start on this to like record a stop motion film. Yeah, you're shaking your head. Yeah,
I got
you remember.
PTSD a little bit, but no, we talked a lot about my mom, but really it was my dad. That story you just told reminds me of my dad, because he was always filming us kids. You know, he was the one with the VHS camcorder that we would borrow to make movies, whether he knew it or liked it or not. And he was also he was a photographer too, so he loved photography. And I still shoot with his old my Nolta black and white 35 millimeter, film camera, just stills and stuff. But yeah,
it's amazing. I think there's a lot to be said for primitive technologies, right? Compared to now.
Say it's powerful stuff. I mean, these are just the tools, but like you were saying, like if you're able to do a show or a film or whatever, and it reaches somebody, I mean, it might reach them for ways that you wouldn't, just going back to what you were talking about a little while ago, like that you would never predict. And it's kind of like, well, we're making a lot of comedy animation stuff, and I wouldn't say we're changing the world per se, but if we're like definitely not setting out to do that, but in a way you kind of are. Like if you've got like a short film, say it's a short film or an episode of a show, and somebody's having either a stressful day and it brings them a laugh or a smile, that might just take the edge off, right? Or that might put them in a better mood, or whatever, like that is in some way powerful and meaningful, or at least I try to convince myself that it is.
It's absolutely worthless. You've wasted your time.
Well, it's been a huge waste, and
this is an intervention.
Your time and anybody else's time. You don't get it back though. So
yeah, exactly. So choose wisely before you press play, kids. Well, I think that's a beautiful point to end on. Like the idea of, honestly, I really believe you just can't predict it. So all you can do is put your stuff out there. It's like Monty Python. They just wanted to have fun, They had no idea they'd shift the kind of comedic landscape. So you don't know what you're going to do, as long as the first audience is yourself, really. So as long as you're making stuff for yourself.
Yeah, make the thing that you want to watch, right? And it always starts with that. Don't try to make the thing that you think somebody else will want to see. Like genuinely, what are you interested in? Selfishly make that for yourself, and then unselfishly put it out to the world.
Yeah.
And
then force other people to work on it when you can pay them.
Exactly. Lock them in a room, force them to animate your stupid idea.
It's so true, though. It is. But then if they promote it on social media afterwards, that means they're proud of it. So
there you go.
But listen, Eric, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.